New stream. Top of the day, beautiful people. Trying to get this. Alright, boom. Yes. Alright, we got it going. Top of the day, beautiful people. Top of the day. Happy Wednesday. 56. Go to the last chapter. 1, 2. Okay. Volume 3. All right, beautiful people. 2. Happy Wednesday. That's Wabu. Sawubona. Sieme. It is day. No, gotta start with a date. Sorry, y'all. I'm trying to put myself together. Jumped up out of bed a little bit too late this morning. I was up too late last night. Okay. It is Wednesday, January 20th, 2021. Day 56 of year 3. I'm reading through the books of the law and the prophets, day 725 of the 3-year consecutive day count of reading through the books of the law and the prophets. Today, guys, we are reading the last chapter in Exodus chapter 40, and then we start with Leviticus. We're going to do chapters 1 and 2, and then we're going to hop over to the legends of the Jews. And today we start in volume 3, which picks up the story in the wilderness. All right, so let's get going. Get the shimmer done first. Alright, let me take a sip of water, y'all. Okay. Shema Israel Adonai Elohim Adonai. Okay, here we go. Hear, therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily, as Yahuwah, the God of our fathers, has promised us, in the land that flows with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel. Pay attention. Hear, O Israel. Yahuwah, our God, He is one God, and you shall love Yahuwah your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you this day shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently unto your children. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them as a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them upon the posts of your house and on your gates. And Yahuwah commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear Yahuwah, our God, for our good always, that He might preserve us alive, as it is this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do these commandments before Yahuwah, our God, as He has commanded us. Shalom, shalom, Mom. Okay, beautiful people, let's set this here. Bring this up for later. Open up. Zip. Bible. Okay. Our gateway. Oh, there we go. Okay, y'all. Exodus 4. Okay. Okay. Okay, Alicia, that's Fabu, hey sister. Okay, y'all. Exodus chapter 40. Then Yahuwah said to Moses, set up the tabernacle on the first day of the new year. Place the ark of the covenant inside and install the inner curtain to enclose the ark within the most holy place. Then bring in the table and arrange the utensils on it, and bring the lampstand and set up the lamps. Place the gold incense altar in front of the Ark of the Covenant. Then hang the curtain at the entrance of the tabernacle. Place the altar of burnt offering in front of the tabernacle entrance. Set the wash basin between the tabernacle and the altar, and fill it with water. Then set up the courtyard around the outside of the tent, and hang the curtain for the courtyard entrance. Take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and all its furnishings to consecrate them and to make them holy. Anoint the altar of burnt offering and its utensils to consecrate them. Then the altar will become absolutely holy. Next, anoint the wash basin and its stand to consecrate them. Present Aaron and his sons at the entrance of the tabernacle and wash them with water. Dress Aaron with the sacred garments and anoint him, consecrating him to serve me as a priest. Then present his sons and dress them in their tunics. Anoint them as you did their father, so that they may also serve me as priests. With their anointing, Aaron's descendants are set apart for the priesthood forever, from generation to generation. Moses proceeded to do everything just as Yahuwah had commanded him. So the tabernacle was set up on the first day of the first month of the second year. Moses erected the tabernacle by setting down its bases, inserting the frames, attaching the crossbars, and setting up the posts. Then he spread the coverings over the tabernacle framework and put on the protective layers, just as Yahuwah had commanded him. He took the stone tablets inscribed with the terms of the covenant and placed them inside the ark. When he attached the carrying poles to the ark, and he set the ark's cover, the place of atonement, on top of it. Then he brought the ark of the covenant into the tabernacle and hung the inner curtain to shield it from view, just as Yahuwah had commanded him. Next, Moses placed the table in the tabernacle along the north side of the holy place, just outside the inner curtain. And he arranged the bread of the presence on the table before Yahuwah, just as Yahuwah had commanded him. He set apart the lampstand in the tabernacle across from the table on the south side of the holy place. Then he lit the lamps in Yahuwah's presence, just as Yahuwah had commanded him. Shalom, shalom. He hung the curtain at the entrance of the tabernacle, and he placed the altar of burnt offering near the tabernacle entrance. On it he offered a burnt offering and a grain offering, just as Yahuwah had commanded him. Next, Moses placed the wash basin between the tabernacle and the altar. He filled it with water so the priests could wash themselves. Moses and Aaron's sons used water from it to wash their hands and feet. Whenever they approached the altar and entered the tabernacle, they washed themselves, just as Yahuwah had commanded Moses. Then he hung the curtains forming the courtyard around the tabernacle and the altar, and he set up the curtain at the entrance of the courtyard. So at last Moses finished the work. Then the cloud covered the tabernacle, and the glory of Yahuwah filled the tabernacle. Moses could no longer enter the tabernacle because the cloud had settled down over it, and the glory of Yahuwah filled the tabernacle. Now, whenever the cloud lifted from the tabernacle, the people of Israel would set out on their journey following it. But if the cloud did not rise, they remained where they were until it lifted. The cloud of Yahuwah hovered over the tabernacle during the day, and at night fire glowed inside the cloud, so the whole family of Israel could see it. This continued throughout all their journeys. Oh, if we still had that presence here with us, that tangible presence. But he said this will happen again, y'all, as he begins to regather us and he moves us back to the promised land, the land that he promised to our forefathers. He said this will be your inheritance forever. And it wasn't until Yahuwah started waking me up that I even realized that the Bible was talking about this. I'm like, what? Wait a minute. Wait. He is going to return us, like we're actually going to like have land that's our own. Like people ain't going to mess with us. Like this is our portion of land. Like we get this like here on earth. Like on earth. We ain't got to wait till we get to heaven. Like because I grew up thinking, of course, we're going to pass away someday. But he said, here during this time, he said, I'm going to take you back to this promised land that I have given to you forever. And you're going to be there. And you know how I know it's going to be here on earth? Because it said when we get there that we will become famous for our produce all across the world. That's what it says. I believe that's in Isaiah. And it also says that we will begin to reproduce. And our children would be righteous for forever. Like there will be many generations that come after us. Like a lot of people think it's like the end of the world. Like right now, it's not. It may be the end of the world for Edom, and although, I mean, they're not gonna be made. It's not like they all gonna die like tomorrow, whatever. But over the course of time, like all their rulership, it's talking about how all the rulership is going to be transferred to the righteous, and Yahuwah is going to see that that happens, right? But we are going to be there, and we're going to be reproducing year after year, not just crops, but actually reproducing offspring that is righteous, that serves the Most High, right? And then the righteous are going to be set up in leadership positions all across the world, y'all. So, but yeah, for many, many generations, we'll be back in our land, right? But in a distant time, it does talk about again how the nations will again try to rise up against Yahuwah's people, right? And that is when that day of Armageddon will happen, where Yahuwah will himself make his presence known to the nations, that you are not going to do this again. My people will never go back into captivity, right? That's what it says. Okay. Leviticus chapter 1. Procedures for the burnt offering. Then Yahuwah called Moses from the tabernacle. Then Yahuwah called to Moses from the tabernacle and said to him, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. When you present an animal as an offering to Yahuwah, you may take it from your herd of cattle or your flock of sheep and goats. If the animal you present as a burnt offering is from the herd, it must be a male with no defects. Bring it to the entrance of the tabernacle so you may be accepted by Yahuwah. Lay your hand on the animal's head, and Yahuwah will accept its death in your place to purify you, making you right with him. And then slaughter the young bull in Yahuwah's presence, and Aaron's sons, the priests, will present the animal's body by splattering it against all sides of the altar that stands at the entrance of the tabernacle. Then skin the animal and cut it into pieces. The sons of Aaron, the priests, will build a wood fire on the altar. They will arrange the pieces of the offering, including the head and fat, on the wood burning on the altar. But the internal organs and legs must first be washed with water. Then the priest will burn the entire sacrifice on the altar as a burnt offering. It is a special gift, a pleasing aroma to Yahuwah. If the animal you present as a burnt offering is from the flock, it may either be a sheep or a goat, but it must be a male with no defects. Slaughter the animal on the north side of the altar in Yahuwah's presence, and Aaron's sons, the priests, will splatter its blood against all sides of the altar. Then cut the animal into pieces, and the priest will arrange the pieces of the offering, including the head and fat, on the wood burning on the altar. But the internal organs and the legs must first be washed with water. Then the priest will burn the entire sacrifice on the altar as a burnt offering. It is a special gift, a pleasing aroma to Yahuwah. If you present a bird as a burnt offering to Yahuwah, choose either a turtle dove or a young pigeon. The priest will take the bird to the altar, wring off its head, and burn it on the altar. But first he must drain its blood against the side of the altar. The priest must also remove the crop and the feathers and throw them into the ashes on the east side of the altar. Then, grasping the bird by its wings, the priest will tear the bird open, but without tearing it apart. Then will burn it as a burnt offering on the wood burning altar. It is a special gift, a pleasing aroma to Yahuwah. All right, y'all, last chapter for the day, Leviticus chapter 2. Procedures for the grain offering. When you present grain as an offering to Yahuwah, the offering must consist of choice flour. You are to pour olive oil on it, sprinkle it with frankincense, and bring it to Aaron's sons, the priests. The priest will scoop out a handful of flour, moisten with oil, together with all the frankincense, and burn this representative portion on the altar. It is a special gift, a pleasing aroma to Yahuwah. The rest of the grain offering will then be given to Aaron and his sons. This offering will be considered a most holy part of the special gifts presented to Yahuwah. If you make your If your offering is a grain offering baked in an oven, it must be of choice flour, but without any yeast. It may be presented in the form of thin cakes mixed with olive oil, or wafers spread with olive oil. If your grain offering is cooked on a griddle, it must be made of choice flour mixed with olive oil but without any yeast. Break it into pieces and pour olive oil on it. It is a grain offering. If your grain offering is prepared in a pan, it must be made of choice flour and olive oil. No matter how a grain offering for Yahuwah has been prepared, bring it to the priest, who will present it at the altar. The priest will take a representative portion of the grain offering and burn it on the altar. It is a special gift, a pleasing aroma to Yahuwah. The rest of the grain offering will then be given to Aaron and his sons as their food. This offering will be considered a most holy part of the special gifts presented to Yahuwah. Do not use yeast in preparing any of the grain offerings you present to Yahuwah, because no yeast or honey may be burned as a special gift presented to Yahuwah. You may add yeast and honey to an offering of the first crops of your harvest, but these must never be offered on the altar as a pleasing aroma to Yahuwah. Season all your grain offerings with salt to remind you of Yahuwah's eternal covenant. Remember, salt keeps, salt preserves. Never forget to add salt to your grain offering. If you present a grain offering to Yahuwah from the first portion of your harvest, bring fresh grain that is coarsely ground and roasted on a fire. Put olive oil on this grain offering and sprinkle it with frankincense. The priest will take a representative portion of the grain, moistened with oil, together with all the frankincense, and burn it as a special gift presented to Yahuwah. All right, beautiful people. So that is the last chapter of Exodus chapter 40, and we read Leviticus chapters 1 and 2. So let us go on over here and start with the legends of the Jews. You know, they have a preface right here. I'm wondering, it's like a little short paragraph. I'm wondering if I should read it. Let me see. I'll read it. Okay, so the preface starts on page 244 if you have the same size book. But if you have the smaller version, which the page numbers are different, it's the beginning of volume 3. And it's titled From the Exodus to the Death of Moses, the preface. I'll go ahead and read it. When Israel went out of Egypt, the house of Jacob, from a people of strange language, Jacob was his sanctuary and Israel his dominion. Jewish legend attempts to describe how Yahuwah's sanctuary, the religion of Israel, and his dominion, the beginnings of Israel as a nation, arose in the time between the exodus from Egypt and the entrance into the Holy Land. Moses is regarded not only as the greatest religious guide of Israel, but also as its first national leader. He is the wisest of the wise, the father of the prophets, as well as king in Jeshurun. Remember, Jeshurun or Jeshurun is another name for Jerusalem. When the heads of the people and the tribes of Israel gather together, he is the king. Hence his unique position in Jewish legend. Neither Abraham, the friend of God, or Solomon, the wisest of all men, nor Elijah, the helper in the time of need, can lay claim to such a position. Great religious and national institutions like the Sabbath, the sanctuary, and many other commandments of Yahuwah revealed to Moses stand in a special relation to his life and work. The sanctification of the Sabbath became quite a living thing to him through the miracle of the manna, and the first sanctuary was actually erected by Moses, which we literally just finished reading. The life of Moses ceased, therefore, to be a thing of the past and became closely interwoven with the everyday life of the nation. The most natural way for the popular mind to connect existing conditions with its past. Hold on. How was that a full sentence? Hold on, y'all. Wait. The life of Moses ceased, therefore, to be a thing of the past and become closely interwoven with the everyday life of the nation. The most natural way for the popular mind to connect existing conditions with the past is the symbolic method. Okay. The present volume contains, therefore, a number of symbolic explanations of certain laws, as, for instance, the symbolical significance of the tabernacle, which, properly speaking, do not belong to the domain of legend. The life of Moses, as conceived by Jewish legend, would, however, have been incomplete if the lines between the legend and the symbolism had been kept too strictly. With this explanation, the arrangement and presentation of the material in the third volume is the same as that in the two preceding ones. Okay. All right, y'all. So chapter 1, Exodus through Jethro. And the title for this is Moses in the Wilderness, the Long Route. And it's page 245. Okay. The Exodus would have been impossible if Joseph's bones had remained behind. Therefore, Moses made it his concern to seek their resting place while the people had but one thought of gathering in the treasures of the Egyptians. But it was not an easy matter to find Joseph's body. Hold on, I think this is where it tells us about I just thought about something we was reading. Remember how I said there was these like gold coins and one of them was a calf? Greetings, Uncle Nathaniel. I think this is the part that tells about that. Yeah, I think this is. Okay, so we're going to find out what this gold coin was that Aaron had when he was constructing the golden calf, right? He said, look, I just threw the gold and stuff in and poof, out came this calf. So we're going to find out what this thing is, and I believe it's going to make mention of what Aaron was talking about. Okay. But it was not an easy matter to find Joseph's body. Moses knew that he had been interred with the mausoleum of the Egyptian kings, but there were so many other bodies there that it was impossible to identify it. Moses' mother, Jochebed, came to his aid. She led him to the very spot where Joseph's bones lay. As soon as he came near them, he knew them to be what he was seeking by the fragrance they exhaled and spread around. But his difficulties were not at an end. The question arose, how was he to secure the possession of the remains? Joseph's coffin had been sunk far down into the ground, and he knew not how to raise it from the depths. Standing at the edge of the grave, he spake these words, Joseph, the time has come whereof thou didst say, Yahuwah will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones from hence. No sooner had this reminder dropped from his lips than the coffin stirred and rose to the surface. And even yet the difficulties in Moses' way were not removed wholly. The Egyptian magicians had stationed 2 golden dogs at Joseph's coffin to keep watch, and they barked vehemently if anyone ventured close to it. Imagine that you walk up to a statue that starts barking, right? Most people would have fled in terror, right? Okay, listen. The Egyptians had stationed 2 golden dogs at Joseph's coffin to keep watch, and they barked vehemently if anyone ventured close to it. The noise they made was so loud that it could be heard throughout the land, from end to end, the equal distance of a 40 days' journey. When Moses came near the coffin, the dogs emitted their warning sound, but he silenced them at once with the words, Come ye people, and behold a miracle. The real live dogs did not bark, and these counterfeit dogs produced by magic attempted. What he said about real live dogs and their refraining from barking had reference to the fact that the dogs of the Egyptians did not move their tongues against any of the children of Israel, though they had barked all the time when the people were engaged in burying the bodies of their smitten firstborn. As a reward, Yahuwah gave the Israelites the law. to cast the dogs, the flesh, they themselves are forbidden to eat. For Yahuwah withholds due recompense from none of his creatures. Indeed, the dogs received a double reward, for their excrements are used in tanning the hides from which the Torah scrolls are made, as well as the mezuzah and the phylacteries. Joseph's coffin in the possession of Moses, the march of the Israelites could begin. The Egyptians put no manner of obstacle in their way. Pharaoh himself accompanied them to make sure that they were actually leaving the land, and now he was so angry at his counselors for having advised against letting the Israelites depart that he slew them. Hold on, I thought this was... I'm going to have to find it, y'all. I'm going to have to go back and find it. I thought it was coming up on it. We may have already read it. But I'm going to find it. I'm going to find it and post it in here, and I'm going to copy that particular section. So it may be like a little paragraph in the description box, because I brought it up and I thought we was about to read it again. Okay, but just in case you didn't hear it the first time, I got to go back and find it for y'all. All right. The Egyptians put no manner of obstacle in their way. Pharaoh himself accompanied them to make sure that they were actually leaving the land, and now he was so angry at his counselors for having advised against letting the Israelites depart that he slew them. For several reasons, Yahuwah did not permit the Israelites to travel along the straight route to the promised land. He desired them to go to Sinai first and take the law upon themselves there. And besides, the time divinely appointed for the occupation of the land by the Gentiles had not yet elapsed. Over and above all this, the long sojourn in the wilderness was fraught with profit for the Israelites, spiritually and materially. If they had reached Palestine directly after leaving Egypt, they would have devoted themselves each entirely to the cultivation of his allotted parcel of ground, and no time would have been left for the study of the Torah. In the wilderness, they were relieved of the necessity of providing for their daily wants, and they would give all their efforts to acquiring the law. On the whole, it would not have been advantageous to process at once the Holy Land and take possession thereof. For when the Canaanites heard that the Israelites were making for Palestine, they burnt the crops, felled the trees, destroyed the buildings, and choked the water springs, all in order to render the land uninhabitable. Hereupon Yahuwah spake and said, I did not promise their fathers to give a devastated land unto their seed, but a land full of good things. I will lead them about in the wilderness for 40 years, and meanwhile the Canaanites will have to repair the damage that they have done. More, ain't y'all so sweet? Boy, I'm telling you, I love him so much. Listen, everything he does is for our good, and how he looks ahead and prepares things. He say, no, you gonna spend some time with me in the wilderness. I'm gonna teach y'all this, and y'all gonna learn this, and y'all gonna learn to love it. And while we doing this, they're gonna repair the land they just tore up. You know, it's oh my gosh, it's almost like ungrateful tenants that you have let stay in your property, right? And say if it's time for them, like they must be evicted. This is one of these times where you gotta go. Your time is up here. You cannot stay here any longer. And y'all about to be evicted. And they knew it. And they are wroth. They are bitter about it. And what they do, they start tearing up your stuff, busting holes in the walls, kicking doors down, busting out the windows, ripping the screens, everything. They start tearing the place up, all because they pissed that they gotta go. That's what was happening. I'll read that again. Listen, hold on. I'll go back up. Over and above all this, the long sojourn in the wilderness was fraught with profit for the Israelites, spiritually and materially. If they had reached Palestine directly after leaving Egypt, they would have devoted themselves entirely each to the cultivation of his allotted parcel of ground, and no time would have been left for the study of the Torah. In the wilderness, they were relieved of the necessity of providing for their daily wants. Yahuwah provided everything. And they would give all their efforts to acquiring the law. On the whole, it would not have been advantageous to process at once to the Holy Land and take possession thereof. For when the Canaanites heard, these ungrateful tenants who was temporarily keeping up residence to make sure the land stay in good working condition, they pissed. And listen. For when the Canaanites heard that the Israelites were making for Palestine, they burnt the crops, felled the trees, destroyed the buildings, and choked the water springs, all in order to render the land uninhabitable. Hereupon Yahuwah spake and said, I did not promise their fathers to give a devastated land unto their seed, but a land full of all good things. I will lead them about in the wilderness for 40 years, and meanwhile the Canaanites will have to repair the damage that they have done. Moreover, the many miracles performed for the Israelites during the journey through the wilderness had made their terror fall on the other nations, and their hearts melted, and there remained no more spirit in any man. They did not venture to attack the Israelites, and the conquest of the land was all the easier. Nor does this exhaust the list of reasons for preferring the longer route through the desert. Abraham had sworn a solemn oath to live at peace with the Philistines during a certain period, and at the end of the term had not yet arrived. Besides, there was the fear that the sight of the land of the Philistines would awaken the sad recollections, and when the Israelites, would awaken sad recollection. Getting tongue tied. Okay, let me start the whole sentence over. Besides, there was the fear that the sight of the land of the Philistines would awaken sad recollections in the Israelites and drive them back into Egypt speedily. For once upon a time, it had been the scene of a bitter disappointment to them. They had spent 180 years in Egypt in peace and prosperity, not in the least molested by the people. Suddenly, Ganon came, a descendant of Joseph, of the tribe of Ephraim, and he spake, Yahuwah hath appeared unto me, and he bade me to lead you forth out of Egypt. Ooh. Listen to this. I remember this now, and I'm about to read it. Okay. Let me go back and read this last sentence again. Pay attention to what had previously happened, y'all. Okay, listen. Nor does this exhaust the list of reasons for preferring the longer route through the desert. Abraham had sworn a solemn oath to live at peace with the Philistines during a certain period, and the end of the term had not yet arrived. Besides, there was the fear that the sight of the land of the Philistines would awaken sad recollections in the Israelites and drive them back speedily into Egypt. For once upon a time, it had been the scene of a bitter disappointment to them. They had spent 180 years in Egypt in peace and prosperity, not in the least molested by the people. Suddenly, Ganon came, a descendant of Joseph, of the tribe of Ephraim, and he spake, Yahuwah hath appeared unto me, and he bade me to lead you forth out of Egypt. The Ephraimites were the only ones to heed his words, proud of their royal lineage as direct descendants of Joseph, and confident to their valor in war, for they were great heroes. They left the land and betook themselves to Palestine. They carried only weapons and gold and silver. They had taken no provisions because they expected to buy food and drink on the way or capture them by force if the owners would not part with them for money. After a day's march, they found themselves in the neighborhood of Gath, at the place where the shepherds employed by the residents of the city gathered with the flocks. The Ephraimites asked them to sell them some sheep, which they expected to slaughter in order to satisfy their hunger with them, but the shepherds refused to have business dealings with them, saying, Are the sheep ours, or does the cattle belong to us, that we could part with them for money? Seeing that they could not gain their point by kindness, The Ephraimites used force. The outcries of the shepherd brought the people of Gath to their aid. A violent encounter lasting a whole day took place between the Israelites and the Philistines. The people of Gath realized that alone they would not be able to offer successful resistance to the Ephraimites, and they summoned the people of the other Philistine cities to join them. The following day, an army of 40,000 stood ready to oppose the Ephraimites. Reduced in strength as they were by their 3 days' fast, they were exterminated root and branch. Oh my gosh, like you just let us out here, bruh. And now we all die. He said they were exterminated root and branch. Oh my gosh. Father and son. We got Noah people coming from your line. Reduced in strength as they were by their 3 days' fast, they were exterminated root and branch. Only 10 of them escaped with their bare life and returned to Egypt to bring Ephraim the word of the disaster that had overtaken his posterity, and he mourned many days. This abortive attempt of the Ephraimites to leave Egypt was the first occasion for oppressing Israel. Thereafter, the Egyptians exercised force and vigilance to keep them in their land. As for the disaster of the Ephraimites, it was well-merited punishment because they paid no heed to the wish of their father Joseph, who had adjured his descendants to solemnly on his deathbed not to think of quitting the land until the Redeemer should appear. Like y'all left too soon. He said y'all should be here until Yahuwah comes to get you. And we know Yahuwah, he personally showed his presence, but he used Moses to bring them out. And that's what they should have waited for. They did not wait, and they died before their time. Whew, may we wait on our Redeemer, y'all. Their death was followed by disgrace, for their bodies lay unburied for many days on the battlefield near Gath. And the purpose of Yahuwah in directing the Israelites to choose the longer route from Egypt to Canaan was to spare them the sight of those dishonored corpses. Their courage might have deserted them, and out of apprehension of sharing the fate of their brethren, they might have hastened back to the land of slavery. Ooh. Okay, where we at? Oh, we're on 36 minutes. We move fast today. Okay, y'all, so let's go ahead and read this next section. Actually, this probably should take us up to the end of our time today. We might actually get to read at the Red Sea. Okay, let's just read. Pharaoh pursues the Hebrews. When Pharaoh permitted Israel to depart, he was under the impression that they were going only a 3 days journey into the wilderness for the purpose of offering sacrifices. I mean, bro, by this time, Egypt is destroyed. You got to know they ain't coming back to this. What they got to come back to? Listen. When Pharaoh permitted Israel to depart, he was under the impression that they were going only a 3 days journey into the wilderness for the purpose of offering sacrifices. He sent officers with them whose duty was to bring them back at the appointed time. The exodus took place on a Thursday. On the following Sunday, the king's watchers noticed that the Israelites, so far from preparing a return, were making arrangements looking to a long sojourn in the desert. They remonstrated and urged them to go back. The Israelites maintained that Pharaoh had dismissed them for good, but the officers would not be put off with their mere assertions. They say, willy-nilly, you have to do as the powers that be command. To such arrogance the Israelites would not submit, and they fell upon the officers, slaying some and wounding others. The main survivors of Egypt went back and reported the contumacy of the Israelites to Pharaoh. Meantime, Moses did not desire the departure of his people to have the appearance of flight before the Egyptians, gave the signal to turn back to Pi-Hahiroth. Those of little faith among the Israelites tore their hair and their garments in desperation. Though Moses assured them by the word of Yahuwah they were free men and no longer slaves to Pharaoh. Accordingly, they retraced their steps to Pi-Hahiroth, and where where two rectangular rocks form an opening, within which the great sanctuary of Baal-zephon was situated. The rocks are shaped like human figures, the one a man and the other a woman, and they were not chiseled by human hands, but by the Creator himself. The place had been called Pithom in earlier times, but later on the account of the idols set up there, it received the name Haherah. Of set purpose, Yahuwah had left Baal-zephon uninjured. Good morning, this is Pamela.
Good morning, Pamela. This is Cheryl at XPO. How are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing this morning?
Oh, girl, I feel like I'm 85 years old. Honestly, I woke up, my bones are creaking, my back's aching, my hips hurting. I'm falling apart this morning.
Yeah, well, hey, at least you're still alive.
True that. You got that right. Well, honey, I've got one skid for you from AIS.
Okay.
Could we bring it tomorrow?
Yes, ma'am. Do you have a purchase order number for me?
Sure do. 00662866. And then it says punch.
Punch, okay.
Punch, yeah. I don't know what that means. Maybe it means something to you.
Yeah, it's missing pieces that we needed for a project. They call it punch.
Oh,
punch
okay.
Items.
Okay.
Okay.
And Pamela, what are the hours we could bring that out, hon?
Tomorrow, can you bring it between 10 and 12?
10 to 12? I think it's probably doable. Okay. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, hon. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Sorry, y'all. Business has to go on, right? Okay. I apologize for the interruption. We run a business, so I gotta take the calls. And I know when they come in because how they're labeled when they pop up. Okay, what was that at? Okay. Okay. Of set purpose, Yahuwah had left Baal-zephon uninjured, alone of all the Egyptian idols. He wanted the Egyptian people to think that this idol was possessed of exceeding might, which it exercised to prevent the Israelites from journeying on. To confirm them in their illusionary belief, Yahuwah caused wild beasts to obstruct the road in the wilderness, and they took it for granted that their idol, Baal-zephon, had ordained their parents. Pith-haherah was famous beside, on the account of the treasures heaped up there, the wealth of the world which Joseph had acquired through the sale of corn he had stored up during the 7 years of plenty. He had divided into 3 parts. The first part he surrendered to Pharaoh. The second part he concealed in the wilderness, where it was found by Korah, though it disappeared again, not to come into view. Wait a minute, y'all. Look, I must have skipped this part. Look, listen. The second part was concealed in the wilderness, where it was found by Korah, though it disappeared again, not to come into view until the Messianic time, and then it will be for the benefit of the pious. Y'all, we gonna find that. When we get out of here, we go to the wood. When he regathers us, that's for us. And it also talks about how manna will appear again in the last days. What that mean? He gonna be taking care of us. We're gonna be out there. When we leave out of here, like we're gonna be taking food. We're gonna be so glad that the master them finally showed up and regathered us. Let's go with the clothes on our backs and the shoes on our feet. We out, bruh. Let's go. So he gonna take care of us just like he did our ancestors the first time. He said, I'm going to gather them from the four. I'm going to regather them from the 4 corners of the earth for a second time, just like I did in Egypt the first time. All we've been talking about, all that has happened, is the gathering the first time. There hasn't been a second time yet. We are going to be a part. We are that second time gathering. I get so excited. I really do. Listen. Just read this again because it's so good. The second part, he concealed in the wilderness, where it was found by Korah, though it disappeared again, not to come to view until the Messianic time, and then it would be for the benefit of the pious. The third part Joseph hid in the sanctuary of Baal-zephon, whence the Hebrews carried it off as booty. When Amalek and the magicians brought the information to Pharaoh that the Israelites had resolved not to return to Egypt, his heart and the heart of his whole people turned against them. The very counselors that had persuaded him to dismiss the children of Israel spake now as follows: If we had only been smitten with the plagues, we could have resigned ourselves to our fate. Or, if besides being smitten with the plagues, we had been compelled to let the Hebrews depart from the land, that too we could have borne with patience. But to be smitten with the plagues, to be compelled to let our slaves depart from us, and to sit by and see them go off with our riches, that is more than we can endure. Yes, the potter wants to put you back together again. That's what Uncle Nathaniel just said. The potter wants to put us back together again. Yes, and I love that song. Oh my gosh, I love that song. And he's going to do it, y'all. He's going to do it again. Yes. Go ahead too, baby. Oh, pick one or the other. One or the other. Okay, now put that one back. No, you're going to need to put that in the freezer or it's going to melt. All right. Now that the children of Israel had gone from the Egyptians, recognized how valuable an element they had been in their country. In general, the time of the exodus of Israel was disastrous for their former masters. Yes, me too. I love the Potter's house. Yes. In addition to the losing their dominion over the Israelites, the Egyptians had to deal with the mutinies that broke out amongst many other nations tributary to them. Oh, you can imagine the drama they had going on. Remember, Egypt, oh, shoot, man. Look. America right now is that second Egypt, right? Like all the nations of the world, I ain't gonna say are submitted to America, but they are held at bay because of America's forces, right? And why? Why, might you ask? Because the children of Israel, Yahuwah's forces, are still within the borders, not just here. Because some people are like, well, what about us over here? We have not forgot about our brethren that are scattered to the other three corners of the earth, right? Everywhere y'all are, whether y'all are, some are still in Africa, or whether they moved you to China, Russia, Oceania, Australia, South America, the Bahamas, wherever, to the four corners of the earth, Yahuwah is going to gather his forces from all four corners. But specifically in the Americas resides King David's army, the kingdom of Judah. Not all of Judah's here, because some of Judah is, what I'm saying is the majority of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi is here in America. So you got the king's army and the priests who provide the direct connection to Yahuwah are here in the Americas, which is why America is like the chosen place of the world stage, where all the goings on, where all the rulings come out at. You got to think about it. The same thing happened with Jerusalem. That's where all the commands are called from. Although we're in bondage, we're in slavery, and it looks a little different from previous days, but we clearly know, everybody of our people know that we are not free. We know that, because as soon as we step out of line, we are reminded real quick, hey, you a sojourner in this land, right? No. And the inhabitants of this land, they say, they feel like they can do whatever and get away with it, but they don't realize that their time is ending, and Yahuwah is about to regather his people, and all the nations will once again understand why the fear of all the world was upon Israel. The entire world feared Israel because Yahuwah himself was their mighty one. He fought for us, right? So what happened was, when all these surrounding nations saw that Egypt could not keep their slaves within their borders and they plundered them, they said, hold on, wait, we ain't got to answer to Egypt no more. Same thing gonna happen with America. What? America? What? America's slaves have plundered America? Oh no! Now you got China and Russia just waiting. They are biding their time before they come to this place. Like we know what's gonna happen. People have dreams that, like, we know, like, you don't even have to have dreams to know and understand that. If you got any kind of just common sense and just some basic logic, you can see something is about to happen in this place. We don't know what's going on, but it seemed like a few supernatural things or man-made pestilence or whatever. Call it man-made, call it whatever you want to. I says Yahuwah Sebawoti working all these things behind the scenes, and people like, and they're still keeping people off track. Oh, China did this, and this place did this, and your president did this. This is why I was like, all y'all still blind. All y'all cannot see the trees right in front of your face. Yo, you cannot see. And it was meant to be that way. Yahuwah has hardened the heart of Pharaoh again. Oh my gosh. Listen. The same thing that's happened to Egypt, how they lost their power, how all the nations that were subject to them, they began to laugh and scoff at them because they couldn't even keep control over their own house. Same thing gonna happen. Same thing gonna happen with America, y'all. I'm just saying. Now that the Yahuwah Sebawoti. Now that the children of Israel had gone from them, the Egyptians recognized how valuable an element they had been in their country. When we go, they're going to know that we are gone. Like, it's going to be total night and day. They really do not understand. And they may give a few accolades here, but they're going to really realize how valuable the children of Israel have been. Not only here in America, but everywhere that we have been scattered. Like, we're literally, we bring the salt to the earth, right? And not just us, some other nations do too, but I'm just saying, for the sake of conversation and what we're talking about here, you know. Okay. In general, the time of the exodus of Israel was disastrous for their former masters. In addition to losing their dominion over the Israelites, the Egyptians had to deal with the mutinies that broke out among many other nations tributary to them. For hitherto, Pharaoh had been the ruler of the whole world. The king resorted to blandishments and promises to induce people to make war against the Israelites, saying, as a rule, the army marches forth first, and the king follows in security. But I will precede you, and as a rule, the king had first choice of the booty, and as much of it as he desired. But I will take no more than any one of you, and on my return from war, I will divide my treasures of silver and gold and precious stones among you. In his zeal, Pharaoh did not wait to have his chariot made ready for him. He did it with his own hands, and his nobles followed his example. Samael granted Pharaoh assistance, putting 600 chariots manned with his own host at his disposal. These formed the vanguard, and they were joined all by the Egyptians and their vast assemblages of chariots and warriors, no less than 300 of their men to one of the children of Israel, each equipped with their different sorts of weapons. The general custom was for 2 charioteers to take turns at driving the car, but to overtake the Israelites more surely and speedily, Pharaoh ordered 3 to be assigned to each. The result was that they covered in one day the ground which it had taken the Israelites 3 to traverse. The mind of the Egyptians was in no wise directed toward spoil and plunder in this expedition. Their sole determined purpose was to exterminate Israel, kith and kin, and the heathen lay great stress upon omens when they are about to start out on a campaign. Yahuwah caused all their preparations to proceed smoothly without the slightest onward circumstance. Everything pointed to a happy issue. Pharaoh himself, an adept in magic, had a presentiment that dire misfortune would befall the children of Israel in the wilderness, that they would lose Moses there, and the whole generation that had departed from Egypt would find its grave. Therefore he spoke to Dathan and Abiram, who remained behind in Egypt, saying, Moses is leading them, but he himself knows not whither. Verily, the congregation of Israel will lift up their voice in the wilderness and cry, and there they will be destroyed. He thought naturally that these visions had reference to an imminent future, to the time of his meeting with his dismissed slaves. But his error was profound. he was hurrying forward to his own destruction. Now, what Pharaoh saw was true, but it wasn't this time that, because they had just left out of Egypt. The children of Israel, most of them, in fact, did find their graves there in the wilderness, and only 2 of that current generation and all that generation's children were allowed to proceed into the wilderness because they were so hard-headed and stiff-necked that they just kept trying the Most High in the wilderness. He's saying, because of all this wilderness will be your grave. And only Joshua and Caleb and all the children, everybody 20 years old and under, was the only ones that entered into the land with Joshua and Caleb. All right, y'all, people, we got to get it together. Listen, he thought naturally that these visions had reference to an imminent future, to the time of his meeting with his dismissed slaves. Stop, Bella. But his error was profound. He was hurrying forward to his own destruction. When he reached the sanctuary of Baal-zephon, Pharaoh, in his joy at finding him, spared while all the other idols... Hey, pause for a second, Bella. Hold on. Wait a minute. Give me 1 second, y'all. Listen. I need you to go upstairs and get your bath. Come on. Upstairs. Okay. Thank you. All right, y'all. That is up there. Okay. All right. What was it? Oh, I was in here. Hold on. Okay. He was hurrying forward to his own destruction. When he reached the sanctuary of Baal-zephon, Pharaoh, in his joy at finding him, spared while all the other idols in Egypt had been annihilated, lost no time, but hastened to offer sacrifices to him, and he was comforted. For he said, Baal-zephon approves my purpose of drowning the children of Israel in the sea. When the Israelites beheld the huge detachments of the Egyptian army moving upon them, and when they considered that in Migdol there were other troops stationed, besides more indeed than their own numbers, men, women, and children, all told, great terror overwhelmed them. What affrighted them most was the sight of the angel of Egypt darting through the air as he flew to the assistance of the people under his tutelage. They turned to Moses, saying, What hast thou done to us? Now they will requite us for all that hath happened, that their firstborn were smitten, and that we ran off with their money, which was thy fault, for thou didst bid us to borrow gold and silver from our Egyptian neighbors and depart with their property. The situation of the Israelites was desperate. Before them was the sea, behind them the Egyptians, on both sides the wild beasts of the desert. The wicked among them spoke to Moses, saying, While we were in Egypt, we said to thee and Aaron, Yahuwah look upon you and judge, because ye have made our Savior to be arbor in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of his servants, to put a sword in their hand to slay us. Then there died many of our brethren during the days of darkness, which were worse than the bondage in which the Egyptians kept us. Nevertheless, our fate in the desert will be sadder than theirs. So remember, also during these 6 days of darkness that they had, the first 3, which was not that dark, but the second 3 days was the part that they actually left in the Canaanized Bible, which they called the 3 days of darkness, which we know there were 7 total, the first 3. Then the blackest of the darkness, which was a darkness from hell that could be felt. That was days 4, 5, and 6, which we read about in the Bible. Days 4, 5, and 6 is what's mentioned in the Bible in Exodus. And then the last day of darkness that's coming is going to meet them at the Red Sea. So it's a total of 7 days of darkness, right? According to what all the manuscripts say together, if you add all the pieces together, right? And during these days of darkness, it wasn't just the Egyptians that died. It was the rebels among us who also died and who would not listen before they left. Many more of our people died in the wilderness because of rebellion. Good morning, Auntie. But a great host of them died during the 3 days of darkness, and they were buried by fellow brethren and stuff, so that the Egyptians wouldn't see and be able to say, oh, they're affected just like us. And Yahuwah made it to be that way for that very purpose, right? Moses in his wisdom. Hold on. I skipped the whole little paragraph. Let's see. Okay, there died many of our brethren during the days of darkness, which was worse than the bondage in which the Egyptians kept us. Nevertheless, our fate in the desert will be sadder than theirs. They at least were mourned, and their bodies were buried. But our corpse will lie exposed, consumed in the day by drought and by frost in the night. Moses in his wisdom knew how to pacify the thousands and myriads under his leadership. He impressed them with the words, "Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of Yahuwah." When will his salvation come? Questioned the people, and he told them that it would appear the following day. But they protested, "We cannot wait until tomorrow." Then Moses prayed to Yahuwah, and Yahuwah showed him the angel host standing ready to hasten the assistance of the people. They were not agreed as to do what they were to do. There were 4 contending parties. The opinion of the first party was that they seek death by drowning in the sea. The second, that they return to Egypt. The third was in favor of a pitched battle with the enemy. And the fourth thought it would be a good plan to intimidate the Egyptians by noise and great hubbub. To the first, Moses said, "Stand still and see the salvation of Yahuwah." To the second, "The Egyptians whom you have seen today, you shall see them again no more." To the third, "Yahuwah shall fight for you." And to the fourth, "Ye shall hold your peace." "What then shall we do?" these asked with their leader. And Moses answered them, saying, "Ye shall bless, praise, extol, adore, and glorify him that is the Lord of war." Ooh, yes, that's his name, Yahuwah Sebawoti. Instead of the sword and 5 sorts of arms which they bore, they made use of their mouth, and it was of greater avail than all possible weapons of war. Yahuwah hearkened unto their prayer, for which he had but been waiting. Like he's just waiting for them to open their mouth. He said, "I'm ready. Let's go." He twisted his words and everything. "Come on, just open your mouth. Just tell me I'm ready. I'm waiting on you." Shh. Israel is singing. Come on. Right? Listen. "Ye shall bless, praise, extol, adore, and glorify him that is Lord of war." Instead of the sword and 5 sorts of arms which they bore, they made use of their mouth, and it was of greater avail than all possible weapons of war. Yahuwah hearkened unto their prayer, for which he had but been waiting. Moses also addressed himself to Yahuwah, saying, "O Yahuwah, Lord of the world, I am like a shepherd who, having undertaken to pasture a flock, has been heedless enough to drive his sheep to the edge of a precipice, and then is in despair how to get them down again. Pharaoh is behind my flock Israel. In the south is Baal-Zephon, in the north Migdol, and before us lies the sea spread out. Thou knowest, O Yah, that it is beyond human strength and human contrivance to surmount the difficulties standing in our way. Thine alone is the work of procuring deliverance for this army, which left Egypt at thy appointment. We despair of all other assistance or device, and we have recourse only to hope in thee. If there be any escape possible, we look up to thy providence to accomplish it for us." With such words, Moses continued to make fervent supplication to Yahuwah to secure Israel in their need. But Yahuwah cut short his prayer, saying, "Moses, my children are in distress. The sea blocks the way before them. The enemy is in hot pursuit after them, and thou standest here and prayest?" Sometimes long prayer is good, but sometimes it is better to be brief. If I gathered the waters together in one place and let dry land appear for Adam, a single human being, should I not do the same for this holy congregation? I will save them if only for the sake of the merits of Abraham, who stood ready to sacrifice his son Isaac unto me, and for the sake of my promise to Jacob. The sun and the moon are witness that I will cleave the sea before the seed of the children of Israel, who deserve my help, for going after me in the wilderness, unquestioningly. Do thou but see to it that they abandon their evil thought of returning to Egypt, and then it will not be necessary to turn to me and entreat my help. Moses, however, was very much troubled in mind on the account of Samael, who had not left off lodging accusations before Yahuwah against Israel since the exodus from Egypt. Yahuwah adopted the same procedure in dealing with the accuser as the experienced shepherd, who at the moment of transferring his sheep across a stream was faced by a ravening wolf. The shepherd threw a strong ram to the wolf, and while the two engaged in combat, the rest of the flock was carried across the water. And then the shepherd returned and snatched the wolf's supposed prey away from him. Samael said to Yahuwah, up to this time, the children of Israel were idol worshippers. Remember, Samael is one of the angels. Samael is one of the fallen angels, as a matter of fact. Up until this time, the children of Israel were idol worshippers, but he was in cahoots with Egypt, helping them. You know, the gods that they worship were actually the fallen angels who helping them. So their magic that they had was coming from the evil forces whose home is here on the earth, and said that they will be here on the earth and they will afflict men. They're gonna agitate, they're gonna aggravate, they're gonna do all sorts of evil to men, sons of the dirt, who are here on the earth. We read that through scripture. You can also find that that's what happened in Enoch chapter 15 specifically, and also in the Book of Remembrance. It gives a lot of detail on those spirits who are here on the earth. Up until this time, the children of Israel were... Okay. Samael said to Yahuwah, up until this time, the children of Israel were idol worshippers, and now thou preparest so great a thing as dividing the sea for them? What did Yahuwah do? He surrendered Job to Samael, saying, while he busies himself with Job, Israel will pass through the sea unscathed, and as soon as they are in safety, I will rescue Job from the hands of Samael. Oh my gosh, y'all, this makes sense. Remember when Moses was talking to Yahuwah at the burning bush, and I believe it was Gabriel, one of the angels who was talking to Moses and taking him around. He saw Samael dart off. He said, who is that? He pretty much said, that's Samael. No, he was talking about, he said, that's the angel of death. But he said his name. He said, and where is he going now? He said he's going to fetch the soul of, he's going to fetch the soul of Job. You know, so we kind of can put together that during this time, Job was alive. So this example that they gave of a shepherd taking care of his flock to get him across the water by tossing some bait to the wolf who was trying to get them, that was to kind of busy the enemy while he got the other ones to safety. And once he got them to safety, he went back and got the one that he used as bait to keep him occupied so we can get all the other ones, you know, over here. But he had to take one of the strongest ones and use them for bait in order to be able to withstand all the strength of the wolf, right? Oh my gosh, y'all, this is so good. Listen. Let me just go back up here and read this over so now you got a better understanding. Moses, however, was still very much troubled in mind on account of Samael, who had not left off lodging accusations before Yahuwah against Israel since the exodus from Egypt. Yahuwah adopted the same procedure in dealing with the accuser as the experienced shepherd, who, at the moment of transferring his sheep across a stream, was faced by a ravening wolf. The shepherd threw a strong ram to the wolf, and while the two engaged in combat, the rest of the flock was carried across the water. And then the shepherd returned to snatch the wolf's supposed prey away from him. Samael said to Yahuwah, up until this time, the children of Israel were idol worshippers, and now thou dost propose to do a great thing such as dividing the sea for them? What did Yahuwah do? He surrendered Job to Samael, saying, while he busies himself with Job, the strong ram Israel will pass through the sea unscathed, and as soon as they are in safety, I will rescue Job from the hands of Samael. Now that is strategy for you. Yahuwah is the master strategist. Israel had other angel adversaries besides. Uzzah, the tutelary angel of the Egyptians, appeared before Yahuwah and said, O Lord of the world, I have a suit with this nation which thou hast brought forth out of Egypt. If it seem well to thee, let their angel Michael appear and contend with me before thee. Yahuwah summoned Michael, and Uzzah stated his charges against Israel. O Lord of the world, thou did decree concerning this people of Israel that is to be held in bondage by my people, the Egyptians, for a period of 400 years. But they had dominion over them only 86 years. Therefore, the time of their going forth have not yet arrived. If it be thy will, give me permission to take them back to Egypt, that they may continue in slavery for the 314 years that are left, and thy word be fulfilled. As thou art immutable, so let thy decree be immutable. Michael was silent, for he knew not how to controvert these words, but it seemed as if Uzzah had won the suit. But Yahuwah himself espoused the cause of Israel, and he said to Uzzah, the duty of serving thy nation was laid upon my children only on the account of an unseeming word uttered by Abraham. When I spoke to him, saying, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees to give thee this land to inherit it, he made the answer, whereby shall I know I shall inherit it? Wherefore did I say to him, thy seed shall be a stranger. But it is well known and manifest before me that they were strangers from the day of Isaac's birth, and reckoning thence the period of 400 years has elapsed, and thou hast no right to keep my children in bondage any longer. The sea divided. Yahuwah spake to Moses, saying, why dost thou stand here praying? My children's prayer has anticipated thine. For thee there is naught to do but to lift up thy rod and stretch out thy hand over the sea and divide it. Right? It's that time. There is nothing left for thee to do but to lift up thy rod and stretch out thy hand over the sea and divide it. Moses replied, thou commandest me to divide the sea and lay bare the ground in the midst of it, yet thou didst say thyself, make it a perpetual decree that the sand shall be placed for the bound of the sea. And again Yahuwah spake to Moses, thou hast not read the beginning of the Torah. I did speak. Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And at that time I made the condition that the waters shall divide before Israel. Take the rod that I have gave unto thee, and go to the sea upon my errand, and speak thus, I am the messenger sent by the Creator of the world. Uncover thy paths, O sea, for my children, that they may go through the midst of thee on dry ground. Moses spoke to the sea as Yahuwah had bidden him, but it replied, I will not do according to thy words, for thou art only a man born of a woman, and besides, I am 3 days older than thou, O man, for I was brought forth on the 3rd day of creation, and thou on the 6th. Moses lost no time, but carried back to Yahuwah the words the sea had spoken. And Yahuwah said, Moses, what does a master do with an intractable servant? He beats him with a rod. Beat him. He beats him with a rod, says Moses. Do thus, Yahuwah ordered, lift up thy rod and stretch out thy hand over the sea and divide it. Thereupon Moses raised up his rod, the rod that had been created at the very beginning of the world, on which were graven in plain letters the great and exalted name, the names of the 10 plagues inflicted upon the Egyptians, and the 3 names of the 3 fathers, the 6 mothers, and the 12 tribes of Jacob. This rod he lifted up and stretched it out over the sea. The sea, however, continued in its perverseness, and Moses entreated Yahuwah to give his command direct to it. But Yahuwah refused, saying, were I command the sea to divide, it would never again return to its former estate. Therefore do thou convey my order to it, that it may not be drained dry forever. But I will let a semblance of my strength accompany thee, and that will compel its obedience. When the sea saw the strength of Yahuwah in the right hand of Moses, it spoke to the earth, saying, Make hollow places for me, that I might hide myself therein before Yahuwah of all, who created all things. Blessed be he. Noticing the terror of the sea, Moses said to it, For a whole day I spoke to thee at the bidding of the Holy One, who desired thee to divide. But thou did refuse to pay heed to my words. Even when I showed thee my rod, thou did remain obdurate. What hath happened now that thou skippest hence? The sea replied, I am fleeing, not before thee, but before Yahuwah, the Lord of all things, that his name be magnified in all the earth. And the waters of the Red Sea divided, and not they alone, but all the waters in heaven and on earth, wherever a vessel was, in its cisterns, in the wells, in caves, in casks, in pitchers, in drinking cups, and glasses. And none of these waters returned to their former state until Israel passed through on a dry land. So not only did the sea divide, wherever water was found, it was divided. Whether it was in a cup, it was in your bathtub, it was in a pond. When the Red Sea divided, the waters on all the earth divided, because they are of the same nature, of the same spirit. Water is water. Wherever water divides, water will divide all over the earth. And it's going to happen again. The angel Gabriel was eager to drown the Egyptians during the same night, but Yahuwah bade him wait until early the next day, until the hour of the morning watch, when Abraham made himself ready to set out for the sacrifice of his son. Gabriel succeeded, however, in holding back the turbulent water about to sweep over Israel. The wall of water on the right he called, Beware of Israel, who will receive the law in time to come from the right hand of Yahuwah. And turning to the wall of the water on the left, he said, Beware of Israel, who will wind the phylacteries about their left hand in the time to come. The water admonished, Beware of Israel, who will let the tzitzit drop down upon their back in the time to come. And the water towering in front of them, he called, Beware of Israel, who will bear the sign of the covenant upon their bodies. Yahuwah caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind. The wind he always makes use of when he chastises the nations. Remember that. Yahuwah always uses the wind. Yahuwah caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind. The wind he always uses to make use when he chastises the nations. The same east wind had brought the deluge, and it laid the tower of Babel in ruins. It was of the cause of destruction of Samaria, Jerusalem, and Tyre, and it will, in future, be the instrument for castigating Rome, drunken with pleasure, and likewise the sinners in Gehenna are punished by the means of the east wind. All night long Yahuwah made it blow over the sea to prevent the enemy from inflicting harm upon the Israelites. He enveloped the Egyptians in profound darkness, so impenetrable it could be felt that none could move or change his posture. This is the seventh day of darkness that fell. Let me go back and read it again, just in case you zoned out for a second. Listen. All night long, Yahuwah made it to blow over the sea. It's talking about the east wind. To prevent the enemy from inflicting harm upon the Israelites, he enveloped the Egyptians in profound darkness, so impenetrable it could be felt, and none could move or change his posture. He that sat when it fell could not arise from his place, and he that stood could not sit down. Nevertheless, the Egyptians could see that the Israelites were surrounded by a bright light, and they were enjoying a banquet where they stood. And when they tried to speed darts and arrows against them, the missiles were caught up by the cloud and by the angels hovering between the two camps, and no harm came to Israel. And that, my beautiful people, is where we're going to stop at today. And so we'll pick up the rest of what happens at the Red Sea tomorrow. Wait, no, not tomorrow. We rest tomorrow. Friday, beautiful people. So I hope y'all enjoyed the reading today. We read the last chapter of Exodus, Exodus chapter 40, and we started in Leviticus. We read the first 2 chapters. And then we started reading here on page, in the Legends of the Jews, beginning at volume 3. We started on page 244, all the way up to page 249 today. Okay. All right, y'all. So it is Wednesday, January 20th, 2021, day 56 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets. And of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 725. And remember, this count only consists of the days we actually read. We're not counting the Sabbath days where we rest or the feast day Sabbath days where we're commanded, where they're considered to be treated like Sabbath days where we rest, no ordinary work is done. We don't count those days either. So let's go ahead and do the blessing. Y'all, today, hopefully it won't be such an eventful day, but we know that it is January today, right? The inauguration, the 20th? Yeah. So today is inauguration day. So they plan for it like it's going to be Armageddon and stuff. They trying to prevent Armageddon. But I think it's going to, I don't think how they hyped it up to be, I don't really think it's going to be all of that. Granted, you got some overly zealous people that believes that the current president has been slighted, that the election was stolen from him, but we all know better, right? What did Yahuwah say? All those who are in positions of leadership, he directly puts there, right? He puts them there. He sets men and women in positions of leadership, and when it's time for them to go, Yahuwah will remove them. It is not by chance that our current president has only served 1 term. Listen, you have to remember, Yahuwah rules in the kingdom of men. So no matter what people say, you even still got some prophets who are holding on to false prophecies and are completely forgetting the words of the Most High. They're blaming all this now on the devil and things have been taken. I'm like, do you think that they're actually mightier than Yah? Like, do you really think the way that they're explaining everything, they got Yahuwah looking like he a not a kleptomaniac, but like he don't know what's going on here on the earth. Like he didn't know this was going to happen. Surely the creator of all things knew how all of this was going to play out, right? And he ain't tripping. He allowed it to be this way. He knew before he was ever even born that he would be president and he would only serve 1 term, despite what everybody else, no matter what title they put on themselves, has said, right? Men and women are put in positions of leadership by Yahuwah himself. And when it's time for them to step down, they will step down. They have to go. It's just the way Yahuwah created it to be, y'all. So that's all I got to say about that. All right, so. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, On this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, May Yahuwah bless us and keep us. May Yahuwah make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon us and give us his peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. All right, beautiful people, double checking for questions. Ain't nothing really here on YouTube over here. How about an organized discussion about once a week? Any takers? That's going to get me off from what I'm supposed to be doing. I will say that. I'm going to keep doing what Yahuwah has told me to do, and we'll kind of keep it in this fashion. Afterwards, if there are questions that are popped up that I haven't looked at and answered throughout the reading, that's why I do a once over after the reading is over. Okay, let me check for questions, because we may have a few minutes, but we may not be able to do that all the time, just depending on how much time it took us to get through the reading. Because during the week and even on the weekend, people have jobs that they have to go to. They can't really, adjust their schedule like others. So it just depends. So y'all can pop questions in there, but as to actually doing an organized discussion, like setting it up for that, yeah, we're not going to do that yet. That's going to get me off. I already got a whole bunch of stuff, and it has to be in this fashion how Yahuwah said to do it. I find that when we veer off from doing from Yahuwah's actual directions, we get off. I've seen that happen so many times, and I said, Father, I will not do that. So I appreciate everybody's suggestions and stuff, but if y'all didn't tell me that himself, I cannot do that, y'all. So if y'all have questions, pop them in here. If I know, I share with you what I know. If I know partially, I tell you, look, I don't really have all this down, but this is what I learned this far. And if I don't know, I'll tell you. I don't know, so And I'm not afraid to say that, because there are a lot of people out there that Yahuwah has revealed more stuff to than he has to me. So, but if y'all know, help a sister out. Give me some information. I'm gonna go back and check it. That's where I'm at on that. So, yeah. So maybe Yahuwah have somebody else to do that. But as for me, he said, you read. So that's I'm standing my post, and I'm gonna stand a proper post. I know all too well what comes from standing in a proper post, right? And veering away from the directions of my superior, right? I shared that with y'all a couple weeks ago about me going to captain's mast while gun decking and watch. You will not catch me gun decking Yahuwah's watch, y'all. I love y'all, but I got to do what he has directed me to do. So with that being said, beautiful people, I love y'all. I hope y'all enjoy y'all day of rest tomorrow. Get some rest. If you have to work because you're just employed by somebody else, and you just don't have that right now, talk to y'all, and maybe your day will be as peaceful where you're not being worked like a Hebrew slave. All right, y'all, I love y'all. I'm out of here. Gotta go. Peace. See y'all Friday morning, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.